Marxist economist Michael Roberts made a post a little while ago talking about the future of China. And in it, part of the discussion that he was doing was whether or not China should be considered a socialist country. Now, I disagree with what it is that he says in the end, but I think it's very important to go over two specific quotes that he's given so that we fully understand the context of the argument that he's making. This brings us to the question of whether China is a capitalist state or not. I think the majority of Marxist political economists agree with the mainstream economics in assuming or accepting that China is capitalist. However, I am not one of them. China is not capitalist. Commodity production for profit based on spontaneous market relations governs capitalism. The rate of profit determines its investment cycles and generates periodic economic crises. This does not apply in China. In China, public ownership of the means of production and state planning remain dominant in the Communist Party's power base, is rooted in public ownership. So China's economic rise has been achieved without the capitalist mode of production being dominant. Now, it appears that he's saying that China is socialist. However, he does also make the following statement. China's socialism with Chinese characteristics is a weird beast. Of course, it is not socialism by any Marxist definition or by any benchmark of democratic workers' control. And there has been a significant expansion of privately owned companies, both foreign and domestic, over the last 30 years, with the establishment of a stock market and other financial institutions. But the vast majority of employment and investment is undertaken by publicly owned companies or by institutions that are under the direction and control of the Communist Party. The biggest part of China's world-beating industry is not foreign-owned multinationals, but Chinese state-owned enterprises. Now, to clarify what he's saying, Michael Roberts is not saying that China is socialist or capitalist, nor is he implying that it's some kind of social democratic revisionist idea of some kind of mix between the two. He is saying that it is neither. Now, I'm going to have to disagree with his assessment on this, if I've understood his argument correctly. I would claim that China is capitalist because of certain aspects of its economy. Now, I think one of the problems that a lot of people have, not necessarily Michael Roberts himself, he's not making this argument, but a lot of people do make this argument, is that state ownership equals socialism. Just because China has a lot of state ownership doesn't make it a socialist country. In fact, you can have a great deal of state ownership inside of capitalism as well, and that state enterprises can still operate on a competitive basis, which many of them often do. Now, he's not saying that state ownership is a sufficient condition for it to be socialism. His assumption is that the state has intervened to a point where he no longer considers it to be capitalism. But we should note that at the same time, China still suffered from the global economic recession of 2008, in that it is not isolated away from the world market as, say, the Soviet Union was during the Great Depression, just to use an example. And he makes another point that the industry is not foreign-owned multinationals. Well, that also doesn't make it not capitalist. I mean, this is equally true of the United States and Canada. This doesn't make Canada and the United States not capitalist countries, so I respectfully disagree with the position that he holds there. Now, the underlying thing that defines capitalism is not the owner in the sense that it's the agent that has the final say on claim of profits or assets, but rather the logic of competition between entities for profits and market share, which produces some of the imminent tendencies. And this is why we can consider some states to not be socialist or some of them to not be capitalist either. There's a variety of ways of conceptualizing capitalism, as we've seen in some recent debates. Now, I think China does fit certain conceptions of them. For example, a great deal of commodity production is actually done according to a market. There's a reason why the impulse section aisle of just about any first world store is filled with products made in China. These are not dictated by the market. Their production is not dependent upon the market forces of the other countries which buy their goods. So I would say in this case that they are wholly wrong, that in this case, I would respectfully disagree with Michael Roberts in that the market does play a significant role, particularly with regards to its export economy. So he has made his claim that China is neither socialist nor capitalist, but he doesn't really define what it is. He more or less defines it by what it is not. And that can cause some kind of confusion for someone trying to understand exactly what he's saying. I, however, disagree, and I make the argument that China is, in fact, a capitalist, very much a capitalist country, and that a large amount of state ownership does not necessarily mean that something is socialist. Although he is not making that argument, many people do. His argument is rather that there's so much state intervention that it can no longer be considered capitalist. However, I would respectfully disagree. Now, what do you think China is? Now, let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.